In the early 1980s, a well-known environmental organization called Greenpeace was working around the world to protect nature and promote peace. One of its main goals at the time was to stop nuclear testing, especially in the Pacific Ocean. Many Pacific islands had been used by powerful countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and France to test nuclear weapons. These tests caused radioactive pollution and harmed both the environment and local communities who lived nearby. France had a nuclear testing site on Mururoa Atoll, a small island in French Polynesia, located in the South Pacific. Greenpeace strongly opposed these tests because they believed the explosions were dangerous to people, animals, and the ocean. To raise awareness and pressure France to stop, Greenpeace planned a big protest mission in 1985. The organization's ship, called the Rainbow Warrior, would sail from Auckland, New Zealand, to Mururoa to lead a protest against French nuclear testing. The ship had a crew of environmental activists, journalists, and photographers from different countries. Their goal was peaceful. They wanted to draw attention to the issue and encourage the world to stop nuclear testing once and for all. The Rainbow Warrior was a former fishing trawler that Greenpeace had turned into its main campaign ship. It had already taken part in many peaceful protests around the world, including saving whales from being hunted and helping people affected by nuclear testing in the Pacific. The name Rainbow Warrior came from a Native American legend about warriors who would come to defend the Earth. For Greenpeace, the ship symbolized peace, hope, and environmental protection. In July 1985, the Rainbow Warrior was in Auckland Harbour, New Zealand. It was being prepared for its next mission, to travel to Mururoa Atoll and stop the upcoming French nuclear tests. The crew was excited and full of energy, getting ready to set sail in just a few days. No one imagined that the ship would soon become the target of a deadly secret operation by the French government itself. While Greenpeace was planning its peaceful protest, the French government saw things very differently. At that time, France's president was François Mitterrand, and his government was deeply committed to maintaining the country's nuclear weapons program. The French military believed that the nuclear tests were essential for France's national security and global power. They viewed Greenpeace as a serious problem, an organization that was embarrassing France in front of the world and trying to interfere with military activities. Some in the French government feared that Greenpeace's protests might encourage other countries or activists to take stronger actions against nuclear testing. So, instead of dealing with Greenpeace diplomatically, some members of the French government decided to silence the protests through sabotage. The French Foreign Intelligence Agency, called the DGSE, Direction Générale de la Sécurité Extérieure, was ordered to carry out a secret mission to destroy the Rainbow Warrior and stop Greenpeace's campaign before it could reach Mururoa. The secret plan was given the code name Opération Satanique. It was a carefully organized mission involving several French secret agents who traveled to New Zealand under fake names and false identities. They pretended to be tourists or married couples, but their real purpose was to plant bombs on the Rainbow Warrior. Two of the agents, Alain Maffard and Dominique Prieur, arrived in New Zealand posing as Swiss tourists. Other agents came separately, bringing the explosive materials with them. The team's job was to attach small but powerful bombs to the hull of the ship, the underwater part of the vessel, and destroy it while it was docked in Auckland Harbour. The plan was meant to look like an accident, so that no one would suspect France. But things did not go as the French government hoped. On the night of July 10, 1985, everything changed. The Rainbow Warrior was quietly moored in Auckland Harbour. The crew had been celebrating the birthday of one of the members earlier in the evening. By around midnight, most of them had gone to bed. Under the cover of darkness, French agents sneaked into the harbour in a small rubber boat. They carried with them 2 bombs that they had made from military explosives. they swam underneath the Rainbow Warrior and attached the bombs to its hull, close to the engine room. Then they left the area and waited nearby. At 11:49 p.m., the first bomb exploded, tearing a hole in the side of the ship. The crew immediately rushed to get out, thinking it might be an accident or an attack. As people tried to escape and check for damage, a second bomb exploded a few minutes later, causing massive destruction and flooding the lower decks. The blasts caused the ship to sink quickly. Most of the crew managed to escape, but one man, Fernando Pereira, a 35-year-old Portuguese photographer, went back to his cabin to try to save his cameras and film. He was trapped by the water and drowned. The Rainbow Warrior sank to the bottom of the harbor, resting on its side. The attack shocked not only Greenpeace, but also the people of New Zealand and the world. When news of the bombing spread the next morning, people were horrified. New Zealand had never experienced anything like this. A peaceful ship had been bombed in its harbor, and a man was dead. At first, no one knew who was responsible. But soon, New Zealand police began a detailed investigation. Police quickly became suspicious when they found that two people who had rented a camper van near the harbor had suddenly left their hotel. These two turned out to be the French agents Maffart and Prieur. They were arrested a few days later at Auckland Airport. New Zealand investigators worked carefully, collecting evidence and questioning witnesses. Over the following weeks, more details came to light. They discovered the rented vehicles, false passports, and traces of the explosives. Eventually, it became clear that this was no random attack. It was a planned act of sabotage by the French government. When this evidence was presented, the French government at first denied everything. French officials said they had nothing to do with the bombing and accused New Zealand of making false claims. However, journalists and investigators continued to uncover the truth. Eventually, the French press revealed that the attack had been ordered by the DGSE, and later it came out that President François Mitterrand himself had approved the mission. The revelation caused a huge international scandal. New Zealand, a small and peaceful country, was shocked that a powerful ally like France had committed an act of violence on its soil. The New Zealand government called it an act of state terrorism. Many countries around the world supported New Zealand and Greenpeace. People were angry that a government had bombed a ship belonging to a peaceful environmental group. Protests took place outside French embassies, and Greenpeace received widespread sympathy and support. The French government's reputation suffered badly. What was meant to be a secret operation to silence critics ended up making France look like a bully. The attack strengthened the anti-nuclear movement instead of stopping it. The two captured French agents, Maffart and Prieur, were put on trial in New Zealand. They both pleaded guilty to manslaughter, meaning they admitted that their actions had caused Fernando Pereira's death. In November 1985, they were sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, the story did not end there. France put strong pressure on New Zealand to release the agents. After long negotiations, an agreement was made in 1986 under the supervision of the United Nations. France formally apologized to New Zealand and paid compensation, both to the New Zealand government and to Greenpeace. As part of the deal, the two French agents were sent to serve their sentences on a French military base on Hao Atoll in French Polynesia. In reality, they did not stay there long. Both were released early, one after less than 2 years and the other even sooner due to health reasons. This angered many people in New Zealand and around the world who felt that justice had not been properly served. Despite the tragedy, Greenpeace continued its work. The organization decided not to let the bombing stop their mission. The Rainbow Warrior was raised from the harbor, but it was too damaged to repair. The remains were later sunk off the coast of New Zealand's North Island, where it became an artificial reef and a symbol of peace. Greenpeace later built a new ship, the Rainbow Warrior II, which continued the fight for environmental justice around the world. The spirit of the original crew and their dedication to peace lived on. The bombing also changed the way many people saw both France and Greenpeace. France eventually stopped testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific in the 1990s, partly because of the strong international opposition that grew after the Rainbow Warrior incident. For New Zealand, the event was also a turning point. It strengthened the country's anti-nuclear stance, leading to laws that made New Zealand a nuclear-free zone. This became a key part of New Zealand's national identity. Looking back, the bombing of the Rainbow Warrior was more than just an attack on a ship. It was an attack on freedom of speech, peaceful protest, and the right to protect the environment. It showed how far a government was willing to go to protect its military interests, even if that meant breaking international law and killing an innocent person. The tragedy also showed the power of truth and persistence. Even though France tried to cover up its actions, the truth eventually came out. The public exposure of the operation damaged France's image far more than Greenpeace's protests ever could have. The story remains an important reminder that violence against peaceful activism is never justified. It also shows how small groups of committed people, like Greenpeace, can stand up to powerful governments and still make a difference. The 1985 bombing of the Rainbow Warrior is one of the most shocking events in modern environmental history. A peaceful protest ship, preparing to oppose nuclear testing, was destroyed by agents of a democratic nation, leading to the death of Fernando Pereira and a worldwide scandal. France's attempt to silence Greenpeace failed. Instead, it inspired even more people to support the cause of peace, nuclear disarmament, and environmental protection. Today, the Rainbow Warrior remains a symbol of courage, truth, and resistance against injustice. The bombing taught the world that the fight for the environment and peace can be dangerous, but it also proved that even in the face of violence, the truth will eventually rise to the surface, just like the rainbow that gave the ship its name.